The chains were cold against her wrists, but she didn't flinch. The soldiers of the Galactic Empire watched her with unreadable expressions, some amused, others curious. But beneath their rigid postures, there was something else. Something they wouldn't admit. Fear. She had been taken from Earth after the invasion, one of the few survivors pulled from the burning ruins of her city. The Empire had expected begging, expected tears, expected her to crumble as so many had before. That was how it always went. Conquered species broke quickly. They fell into line, terrified of what the Empire might do to them next. But she wasn't broken. She stood in the heart of their warship, surrounded by towering alien warriors, and stared at them as if she were the one in control. Her eyes held no panic, no desperation, only quiet defiance. The High Commander studied her from his elevated seat, fingers drumming against the armrest. He had seen countless species fall before the might of the Empire, had watched their leaders bow the moment their worlds were reduced to ash. Yet this human woman, small, fragile by their standards, did not look away. One of the guards sneered. "Do you not understand your situation, human?" Still, she said nothing. The commander leaned forward, intrigued. "We've shattered your planet's defenses. Your kind is scattered. You are alone here. And yet, you show no fear." For a moment, there was silence. Then, at last, she spoke. "You think fear is the only response to pain?" Her voice was steady, calm. "You think just because you've conquered, we've surrendered?" Murmurs spread through the room. The Empire had crushed civilizations that had stood for thousands of years. They had enslaved species who had sworn they would never kneel. But something about this woman unsettled them in a way they couldn't explain. The commander's eyes narrowed. "What are you hiding?" She smiled. It was small, barely noticeable. But it was there. And it sent a chill through the room. Because for the first time, the warriors of the Galactic Empire felt something they never had before. Doubt. The silence stretched. The Empire soldiers, trained to break the wills of entire worlds, found themselves shifting uneasily. Their High Commander, a being who had overseen the destruction of planets without a second thought, studied the human woman with an intensity that betrayed his growing unease. Still, she did not cower. That smile, faint but deliberate, sent an unspoken message, one the Empire was unprepared to receive. The commander rose from his seat, the weight of his authority pressing down on the room. "You misunderstand your position," he said, voice steady but colder now. "This is not defiance. It is foolishness." She remained unmoved. He stepped closer, his towering form meant to intimidate. "We have studied your kind," he continued. "Humans are adaptable, yes. Resilient, perhaps. But alone, they break. It is only a matter of time." She tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words. Then, finally, she spoke again. "You keep telling me what humans do." Her voice was soft, measured. "But you don't know us at all." The commander's expression darkened. He had expected anger, expected desperation. He had seen it all before, creatures who swore they would never yield, only to crumble when they realized resistance was hopeless. Yet this human, she was different. The tension in the room thickened. The guards waiting along the edges of the chamber tightened their grips on their weapons. Their confidence, once absolute, was beginning to waver. The commander wasn't about to let that happen. "Bring her to the interrogation chamber," he ordered. Two soldiers stepped forward. She didn't resist as they grabbed her arms, but there was no submission in her posture, no sign of surrender in her gaze. They could drag her wherever they wanted. She wasn't afraid of them. And that was what unsettled them the most. The walk through the warship's dim corridors was slow, deliberate. The soldiers beside her expected hesitation, expected uncertainty. But she moved with them as if she belonged there, as if she was not a prisoner being escorted to an uncertain fate. One of the guards scoffed. "You think this is a game?" She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "No," she said simply. "I think you don't realize what you've done." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. When they finally reached the interrogation chamber, the door slid open with a mechanical hiss. The room was sterile, metallic, filled with unfamiliar technology designed to extract information. A single chair stood at the center, restraints built into its armrests. The guards forced her down into the seat, locking her in place. The commander entered a moment later, his gaze sharp, calculating. "This will go one of two ways," he said. "You will tell us what we want to know, or you will learn what fear truly means." She met his gaze, unwavering. Then, without hesitation, she leaned forward as far as the restraints allowed. And she whispered, "You already have." The words hung in the air like a threat. Not shouted, not laced with anger, just a simple truth spoken with absolute certainty. The commander didn't react at first. He watched her, waiting for some sign that she was bluffing. A flicker of hesitation, a crack in her composure. But there was none. The soldiers in the room shifted uncomfortably. They had subdued countless prisoners before, had heard every desperate plea and empty threat. But this was something else. This was not fear. This was control. The commander exhaled slowly, stepping closer. He would not let a single human unsettle him. "You speak in riddles," he said. "But words mean nothing here." He gestured to one of the attendants, and a panel on the wall came to life, its cold blue lights casting an eerie glow over the room. Strange symbols flickered across the screen, Empire standard interrogation sequences. The woman remained still, watching. The machine hummed to life. A low pulse filled the air, vibrating against the walls. It was not designed to harm, only to break the mind, to pull truth from those who dared resist. No physical pain, only pressure. Relentless, inescapable. The commander studied her. "Tell me, human, what is it that you think we've done?" The pulse grew stronger. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if listening to it. When she opened them again, there was something almost pitying in her expression. "You took me," she said. The commander waited for more, but she didn't continue. His patience thinned. That much is obvious. Her fingers curled slightly against the restraints. "And you think that was your choice?" A single breath of silence passed through the room. The commander's expression remained unreadable, but something in his stance shifted. A quiet flicker of uncertainty. It was absurd, of course. The Empire took what it wanted. The Empire controlled what it conquered. There was no higher force guiding them, no unseen consequence beyond what they dictated. "And yet, do you believe humans are special?" he asked, voice almost amused. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned her head slightly, listening. Not to the machine. Not to the guards. To something else. The commander frowned. "Special?" she finally said. "No." Her gaze snapped back to his, sharp and deliberate. "Just different." The pulse from the machine wavered. A glitch barely noticeable. The attendant frowned, tapping at the controls. The commander folded his arms. "You stall for time." A slow breath left her lips. "No," she murmured. Another glitch. The lights flickered. And then, deep within the warship, something changed. A sound. A shift. The commander turned his head slightly, listening. The soldiers straightened, hands tightening on their weapons. Then came the first alarm. A sharp, distant warning. A system malfunction? A power failure? No. Something was here. Something was coming. The alarm blared through the ship, a shrill sound that sent a ripple of tension through the room. The commander's gaze snapped toward the control panel, where red warning symbols flashed across the screen. The interrogation chamber was locked, secure, nothing could have breached this deep into the warship. And yet, something had. The guards tightened their grips on their weapons, exchanging uneasy glances. There had been no distress calls, no enemy ships detected before they captured the human. But now, something was happening. Something they didn't understand. The commander turned back to her, eyes narrowed. "What did you do?" She didn't answer. The pulsing hum of the interrogation machine flickered again, stuttering as though something had disrupted its power. The lights dimmed for half a second, casting eerie shadows along the cold metal walls. Then silence. The machine shut down completely. A deep, humming vibration echoed from somewhere beneath the floor. Faint at first, but growing. A sound that didn't belong to the ship. The guards reacted instantly, raising their weapons, their training forcing them to prepare for the unknown. But there was nothing to see, just the woman, still bound to the chair, watching. The commander stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Tell me what's happening." For the first time since her capture, she let out a quiet breath, almost like a laugh. "You took me," she said again, as if repeating a lesson he had failed to learn. The sound beneath them grew louder, resonating through the walls, the floors, the very structure of the warship. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a system failure. It was something else. The commander's communicator crackled to life. A panicked voice on the other end. "Hi, Commander." The ship there's the signal cut out, replaced by static. A deep shudder ran through the warship. The lights flickered again. Then, all at once, the emergency power activated, bathing everything in a deep red glow. The woman lifted her gaze to meet his. There was no malice, no threat in her expression, just quiet certainty. "You thought I was alone?" she murmured. The words sent a chill through the room. The commander clenched his jaw, forcing himself to ignore the unease curling in his chest. He wouldn't be manipulated by a single human. He opened his mouth to demand answers, but then a new sound filled the air. Not an alarm. Not a malfunction. A voice. It came through the ship's comms, distorted but unmistakable. "We found her." The guards turned in confusion, eyes wide. The commander froze. The woman smiled. And then the warship shook. The warship lurched violently, metal groaning under the strain of an unseen force. The commander barely had time to steady himself before the emergency alarm screamed again, this time in full distress mode. The red lights pulsed faster. The entire structure shuddered, as if something had latched onto it, something impossibly strong. The guards hesitated, their once unshakable confidence cracking. No enemy fleet had been detected. No threats had approached. Yet something had found them. The commander turned sharply to the woman. She was still restrained, still seated in the interrogation chair, yet somehow she remained the only one completely calm. "What have you done?" he demanded. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The ship jolted again, this time harder. A deep, rhythmic pounding echoed from somewhere outside the chamber, reverberating through the walls. The commander's communicator crackled once more, but the voice on the other end was different, now strained, desperate. "They're inside." Static. The guards exchanged panicked looks. One moved toward the door, but before he could open it, total darkness. For the first time in his life, the commander felt something unfamiliar creep into his chest. Dread. Then, a new sound. A slow, metallic hiss as the interrogation chamber door slid open, revealing nothing but the deep, suffocating void of the unlit corridor beyond. And footsteps. They were slow, deliberate. More than one. Then came the voice. Not over the comms. Not distorted. Real. Close. "We told you. You should have left her alone." A flicker of emergency power returned, bathing the room in dim, flickering red. And in that fractured light, the commander saw them. Humans. Not prisoners. Not captives. Free. Moving with purpose, their faces unreadable. They wore no armor, carried no weapons beyond the confidence of those who knew they had already won. The guards raised their weapons instinctively, but before they could act, the woman in the chair breathed in a slow, deep inhale, as if savoring the moment. And then, without resistance, the restraints holding her in place unlocked. The sound of metal releasing echoed through the silent chamber. She stood. The commander took an unconscious step back. She looked at him one last time, her expression neither cruel nor vengeful. Just certain. "You were wrong," she said quietly. "Humans don't break." The warship shuddered one final time, but this time it wasn't a struggle. It was surrender. And as she stepped forward, Flanked by those who had come for her, the commander finally understood. They had never taken her prisoner. They had only brought her exactly where she needed to be.